Thank God the time has finally come for the 2015 NFL Draft. I'm preparing myself for 3 days of total epic awesome, which the draft is every freaking year. It's an incredible experience, isn't it? You sit there for 3 days. It totally engrosses your life as a football fan. It consumes you. And by the end of it, you feel worn down. You feel beaten down, especially as you get into Saturday afternoon. You get to the 5th, 6th, 7th round. You're like, oh my God, could this be over? And then once it's over, you're incredibly sad. You're beside yourself with disappointment. And you're already thinking about next year. And you can't wait for next year's NFL draft. So that way you can sit there and spend 3 days doing the same damn thing all over again, basically. It's an incredible thing. I wish I was back in the Midwest still, so that way I could have explored the possibility of going live in person to the 2015 NFL Draft in Chicago, but alas, it wasn't to be. Maybe someday in the future I can do so. Before I actually get to the picks in my final mock draft, which is a 3-rounder, and you'll see all the picks in the description box down below, I wanted to give you the opportunity to show how much of an expert you are and have you go toe-to-toe against me, and let's see who really knows what they're talking about, see who really is the expert, so to speak. I'm going to do a mock draft contest. It's only for the first round. We're not going to do it for any type of prize other than bragging rights, and bragging rights are incredibly important in pride and establishing credibility, what have you. So what will happen, this will be open until Thursday, April 30th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You have the ability to put your picks in the comment section down below, or you can hit me up at Twitter and tweet them to me at pfspot_Schlegel. It's a Twitter handle. I'll try and put that information in the description box as well. But basically, you'll have the opportunity to go toe-to-toe against me. Let's see who really knows what they're talking about. So here's how the scoring is going to work. You get the player, team, and pick right, and that's 5 points. So just as an example, let's say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took Jameis Winston #1 overall, and you mocked that. You would get 5 points. Now let's say, for example, you have, let's say, I'm trying to think of a specific situation, like my Chicago Bears. Let's say you have them taking Kevin White, but you have them, doing it at 7, and they ended up getting him at pick 6 or pick 9 because of a trade. You would get 4 points for that because you correctly picked the player to the team. Now, if you sat there and let's say at number 2 had the Tennessee Titans taking Marcus Mariota, but a team like Cleveland or the Chargers or the Eagles or the Jets traded up to that pick to get that guy instead, then you would get 3 points, if that makes sense. If you get the position and the team right, but the wrong player, that's worth 2 points. So let's say at pick number 6, I have the Jets taking Bud Dupree. Let's say they took Vic Beasley there instead. I got the position right for the team. I just did get the player right, so I'm going to get 2 points. And then if I get the position right at the pick, but maybe it's the wrong team, let's say, then that would be worth 1 point. Let's say at number 9, I've got Andrus Peat in this mock draft going number 9, but let's say somebody traded up to number 9 and they took an offensive tackle that wasn't Andrus Peat, I would still get 1 point. Here's some bonuses. If you correctly pick the top 5, that is worth 15 points. That means correctly picking the 5 teams and the 5 players and the positions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like for me, my top 5, I've got Jameis Winston going to Tampa 1. Tennessee's got Mariota at 2. Jacksonville's got Amari Cooper at 3. Oakland's got Leonard Williams at 4. Atlanta's trading up to 5 with the Redskins to get Dante Fowler out of Florida. If that transpired exactly that way and I nailed all 5 picks, then I get 15 points. Or if you did it and you got it all right, it would be 15 bonus points. If you correctly pick a trade of any kind between 2 teams in terms of who would move up and who would move down in what position, that's a 5-point bonus. After the top 10, if you've got a guy that is taken within 2 picks of where you slotted them, let's say you had a guy slotted to go number 13 and they went number 11 or number 15, then you would get a half-point bonus for that. And if you get 10 picks completely right, and when I say completely right, that means the player, the team, and the pick number, if you get 10 of them, you get 10 bonus points. And if you get more than 10, then you're a freaking god probably, and you get 1 point thereafter. So I'll try to put all these details in the description box down below for this mock draft contest. Hopefully everything will fit in the description box. If it doesn't, I will put it in the comments of this video. Now let's actually talk about my final 2015 NFL mock draft. Where to begin? Well, let's start off with this first. You got some interesting things here with Shane Ray getting busted for marijuana possession right in the twilight of the draft process. What an idiot. What a moron. It'll be interesting to see how much his draft stock is hurt because of this. Now, frankly, I've got him going 21 to Cincinnati. And that might have been where I had him going anyways, and I've had him going there, I believe, before anyways. So I don't know how much it's going to hurt his draft stock. It most certainly does some. It's most certainly going to cost him money. I don't know if a team's going to really want to touch him in the top 10 because, again, you're talking about judgment. Then you combine that with the questions about a systematic fit. Then you worry about the toe. I think somewhere between 20 to 32 is where he will ultimately go, in my opinion. Then you've got the stuff with Lyle Collins. I know a lot of people are sitting there and saying, well, the police are saying he's not a suspect. Remember, Aaron Hernandez wasn't a suspect at one point in time either. However, that's not me implying in any way that Lyle Collins did anything wrong whatsoever. However, the concern being is that if teams write at the worst possible timing for Lyle Collins, you're talking about in this draft process, here's a guy that could potentially drop out of the first round because teams are concerned about this. Teams are worried about this. Do you want to invest a first-round pick on a guy who could potentially be facing a charge, or you don't know what's going on? All these different thoughts and possibilities could cram in there. So I really had a hard time slotting Lyle Collins in this draft. I went off of the best-case assumption that he was just being questioned to see if there were any other people of interest, that he had nothing to do with it, that there was nothing wrong. He did nothing wrong on his part. So I've got him going 25 to Carolina. Now, you'll look in terms of the actual mock draft itself. I've got Jameis Winston going number 1 to Tampa Bay. I've got the Titans staying at number 2 and taking Marcus Mariota. I think that's the best decision for them. I think that's a smart decision. That's the right decision. And I think that's the way they may end up leaning because they might not be able to get the type of package to move down that they might have anticipated. The first real surprise to me comes at number 3 with Jacksonville, which is I've talked about before and I've tweeted about before. This is going to be where the draft really begins because the Jacksonville Jaguars could do another crazy thing like they did last year when they took Blake Bortles at number 3 and shocked the world, and I think they're going to do so again with Amari Cooper. Now, I've had them slotted to take a wide receiver before, so this is not just something where I'm going off of reports and I'm pretending it to be mine. You can go back and look at previous mock drafts. I've had them taking a wide receiver. Granted, it was Kevin White at number 3, but I did have them taking a wide receiver at number 3 because I thought the value was really good there, that it would be somewhat of a safe pick, and they needed a number 1 wide receiver because they really don't have that type of guy. So I'm most certainly not going to knock the Jacksonville Jaguars for taking a guy like Amari Cooper, number 3 overall. I think it makes a lot of sense. He's not personally my number 1 wide receiver in this draft, but I don't think the difference between him, Devante Parker, and Kevin White is all that great anyway, so it's up to interpretation and scheme fit and everything else. And again, the Jaguars have done a lot worse in recent drafts than drafting an Amari Cooper, number 3. So that's where the draft really begins. Number 4, I've bounced back and forth with Oakland and what they're going to do. At the end of the day, just to shut some people up, I've had them taking Leonard Williams out of USC. I think it could be Dante Fowler at that point. Could be Kevin White at that point. Could be a trade down and get a guy like Dupree. Any fucking thing possible could happen. But at this point in time, like I said, if anything else to shut people up, I've got Leonard Williams going number 4. The first trade of this draft that I have going on is number 5. I think the Falcons desperately want to move up for an impact edge rusher, and the Redskins want to desperately move back and accumulate additional picks, in part to compensate for what they lost in the RG3 trade between 2012, 13, and 14's drafts. It's a good marriage and combination here. Fowler's there at 5. I think he fits what Dan Quinn's going to want to do in Atlanta a lot. He has familiarity with him, going back to recruiting him to Florida to begin with. Washington will want to move back to 8, so that way they can still get their guy, which will be a better value at 8 than he most certainly would be at 5. So I've got the Falcons taking Fowler at 5. The first real super-duper surprise, in my opinion, the first off-the-wall thing, of course, would come from the Jets at number 6 and Bud Dupree. Now, for my money, he is the number 2 edge rusher in this 2015 NFL draft. And I won't knock them as much as other people would if they took him over a guy like a Vic Beasley or a Shane Ray. However, again, it being the Jets, this is a team that may have felt that they addressed so many of their needs in the offseason, so that way they can just purely go best player available. It would be another bad thing for them to sit there and take yet another defensive player in the first round yet again. At some point in time, you have to invest high picks in your offense as well. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Jets desperately try to move back and address that offensive line, and that may very well be what happens. But in this particular case here, I didn't have that happening. I didn't really see where something would work out where they could do that. So they stuck at 6, and they took Bud Dupree. I've got my Bears taking Kevin White at number 7. I've been talking about it before for a while, that the Bears can't just focus on the defensive side of the ball because their needs on the offensive side of the ball in certain positions are just as big as on the defensive side of the ball. And Kevin White makes a ton of sense for Chicago, and I'd be very, very happy if that's what they ended up with. Now, will they? We'll see. But last year, I accurately predicted that they would take Kyle Fuller, and that's exactly who they took. I've got Scherff going number 8 to Washington. They need to address that offensive line and that offensive side of the ball. There's been all this talk about them taking an edge rusher and so on and so forth, but their offensive line was really bad in 2014. And they need to be able to better protect RG3. If you're going to pick up his option, which you're going to do, then you need to better protect him. You need to better help him out, and drafting an edge rusher isn't going to do that. I've got the first offensive tackle off the board being Andrus Peat, going number 9 to the Giants. I have no clue what the Giants are going to do. So just throw out an offensive tackle, and even though I like Flowers better, I'm like, they might like Peat better, and there you go. I've got Devante Parker going 10 to the Rams. They really need a big-time number 1 explosive wide receiver on the outside, and they can get it here. The next trade I have going on, I've got the Miami Dolphins moving up from 14 to 11 to be able to get Todd Gurley. I think they love Todd Gurley. I think they covet Todd Gurley. And at this point in time, with him being available outside of the top 10 and with the severe threat maybe of the Minnesota Vikings potentially just saying, hey, well, fuck it, we'll take a guy like Todd Gurley, it would entice the Dolphins to be able to move up, not take the chance. I mean, at this point in time, talk about maybe having to give up a 4th-round pick. You've already traded with them in the offseason with the Mike Wallace deal. So there's at least some type of relationship there. You know, Rick Spielman wants to move down. He's made it well known. The Miami Dolphins, I think, want to move up to get an impact type of guy on the offensive side of the ball to help out Tannehill, and Todd Gurley is that impact type of player for day number 1. It's a deal that works out for both parties, as Minnesota could still peel back, and in this situation, they get Trey Waynes. In terms of any other things that really stand out, I think you'll see 6, maybe 7 wide receivers going round number 1. I think the corners will start to go in the middle to late portion of the round. I think Kevin Johnson could end up going higher than 22 at Pittsburgh, where I have him going. One thing that might surprise a lot of you is that when you look at number 29 at Indianapolis, I've got them taking a safety, but it's not Landon Collins. I think the Colts might view a guy like a Demarius Randall out of Arizona State as a more athletic option, more of a true center field type of option, and more of a real impact type of player in their secondary at a big position of need like safety. And as a result, they might rate him above a Landon Collins on their board, which might allow a Landon Collins to slip. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities right now that Landon Collins slips entirely out of round number 1 and into round number 2, similar to guys like Randy Gregory and so on and so forth. In terms of anything else, if you've got any other questions about my final 2015 NFL mock draft, let me know in the description box down below. You want to challenge me on it. You want to call me a fool about it. You want to praise me and call me a genius, which of course I would prefer. You can do that in the comment section down below. You want to take part in this mock draft contest, by all means, feel free to do so. Again, it's not for money. It's not for any prize. Maybe I'll give you a shout out in a video. That's fine. But it's about bragging rights, and it's about establishing your credibility, and it's about showing who's the best and who's the real NFL draft expert. I hope you guys decide to take part. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So, again, my final 2015 NFL mock draft. Read them and weep. Let me know what you think down below.